So, the Sonic movies are all bad, and everyone gets mad at me when I say that. For some reason, the internet and gaming culture collectively decided to be very easy lays for a very bad series of movies, and everyone gets pissed at me when I say that, and I tried very hard, guys, to go easy on Sonic 2, because I recognize that it was better than Sonic 1, and the director, Jeff Fowler, seems like a nice guy, and he's doing what he can with this franchise, and I try not to hold it against the movies, because it's not entirely the filmmaker's fault that a very obnoxious, even by the standards of gaming fandom, audience decided to be even more obnoxious than Sonic fandom usually is about the ugly Sonic thing in the first movie, and decided to torment the animators about until they changed it, and still made a bad movie. But a bad movie with a Sonic that looked like he does in the games, and is still a bad character in a bad movie, but people, I guess, liked that the internet got its way, which is, generally speaking, when the internet gets its way about anything, it's bad, whether it's designs of Sonic characters or choice of American political leaders, so anyway. These movies are not very good. They have decent voice acting, or at least interesting voice acting choices, but increasingly you wonder why they don't just make animated Sonic films. I digress. This one is not as good as Sonic 2. Probably going to end up being the high watermark of that franchise, which at the very least found a balance in between mostly being a cartoon adventure movie with Sonic and Tails running around doing stuff, and occasionally cutting back to the human actors. It only briefly turned into a stupid wedding comedy for a solid 10-minute chunk for no reason in the middle of the movie, and then otherwise is just animals fucking around with Jim Carrey, which, fine, probably about as good as that was going to be. This one has all of the hallmarks of being something that was put together very quickly after the second one did even better than they thought it was going to do, and they realized, okay, we've really got to knock this right the fuck out before people get sick of this, so let's do the Shadow story, and let's put together as much on previs as we can, even before we have a script. Not sure that's what happened, but it feels like it does. Most of the action scenes feel like things that could have been prevised before they had a solid story. Like, we know that we want to have some heist stuff. We know that we want to have Sonic and Shadow powered up and fighting in an open space somewhere. We know we need to have a motorcycle versus Sonic chase. All stuff that you don't need to have a fully finished script to set up and you can plug a story into later. So the plot doesn't fully have a coherent structure to it. The new, slightly revised for movies business with Maria Robotnik and Shadow story doesn't really fit fully into it. There's a lot of convoluted narrative back and forth to get to a point of what needs to be happening with Robotnik and Gerald Robotnik, his grandfather, in there. It's bizarre that the story comports to have Robotnik come back and find out that he has family backstory that he doesn't know about and that he seems to care about, but when the Maria and Shadow story come into it, it seems like he's not as concerned with that, and yet he should be, because he seems to be concerned with other parts of it, so these were not fully coherently put together. And all of the human stuff, apart from the cartoon, motion capture, animated animal stuff, is all taking place largely separate from each other. Most of the human characters are paired off in such a way that they're almost never on screen together. I don't think James Marsden and Jim Carrey ever share scenes together. Most of Jim Carrey's scenes are filmed with Jim Carrey himself. The Sonic's human family scenes are filmed entirely separately. They take place in their own space. The gun soldiers and military scenes. The movie also can't make up its mind whether gun are good guys or bad guys. That's unusual. That feels like a whole bunch of rewrites. And for those wondering what the hell Krysten Ritter's role in this movie is, because there was all kinds of fan mystery, who is Krysten Ritter playing? I'm not sure Krysten Ritter knows what Krysten Ritter's character is in this movie. She's in there. She has a name and appears in scenes. I'm not sure what the fuck the point of her was in this. Anyway, for people not introduced to the very, very stupid storyline of the Shadow the Hedgehog side of the Sonic lore, which has now been translated and adapted into the somehow even more stupid storyline of Shadow the Hedgehog in the movies. Shadow is edgy black and red Sonic who rides a motorcycle and has guns because it was the early 2000s and those seemed like good ideas when they came up with them. He has been in a science lab for a certain amount of time. He breaks out and wants revenge for things. Sonic has to either stop him or team up with him. There is a tragic backstory involving lots of shattered science tubes and explosions and heavy metal music, and it's all extremely edgy and emotional. Just ask the alleged adults who were losing their shit every time it was referenced in flashbacks in the theater. The only actual enjoyable part of screening these movies as a critic who knows what all of this is supposed to mean, by the way, is getting to attempt to explain to fellow critics afterwards who stop you to ask what the hell is going on here and why were people screaming in the theater, specifically attempting to hash out which instances involved people screaming because one of the boring interchangeable cartoon animals had changed color, and which instances were the boring interchangeable cartoon animals actually being a supposedly new character who is still just Sonic but a slightly different shade of Sonic. And then having to, experience the looks of vague pity from my colleagues that, yes, I actually do have to know this for a living. Are there bright spots here? Yes, Keanu Reeves seems to be having some fun playing Shadow. At the very least, by vocals, seems to understand what movie he's in, and is playing this very dumb character completely straight. He understands the assignment. One is not sure if the screenwriters do, but the voice actors all do. One fun thing about Shadow in this is that he kind of makes Knuckles funnier, because they've really already done this whole character as a joke in the previous movie with Knuckles. Since Knuckles sort of predated in the whole Sonic mythos, giving these characters slightly more voice and depth in the games, in the movies, they kind of settled on Knuckles' personality as more or less a parody of what they're doing straight with Shadow here, as a character who acts like an action movie tough guy and doesn't know that they're a stuffed animal. So it's amusing that Knuckles in this one is still doing the guy who sounds like Idris Elba doing his I'm a tough guy thing, but still looks like a big plush doll. And we're supposed to laugh at that because it's funny. And then Shadow shows up doing Shadow, which is guy who acts like a badass Keanu Reeves character, but looks like a big plush doll. But we're supposed to take this version completely seriously and be all wrapped up in the drama and how bad he feels for himself and his revenge quest, even though we're laughing at exactly the same caricature with Knuckles. Structurally, the story is very incoherent. It doesn't feel like a lot of effort was put in and could have been put in. They have good voice actors, and what's frustrating is you can tell that there is love and affection for the Sonic brand, the Sonic characters, the games, the reasons that people go to see these, which is why it's frustrating that they're not trying just a little bit harder to make the movie and the story actually good. This could be at least as good as, if not like the animated Mario movie, it could be at least as good as the better Pokemon movies. There's a meta joke in this about Detective Pikachu, which I guess means that exists as a movie that people watch in this universe, which has interesting implications. But that was a better movie than this. And I'm glad that people who are really, really hardcore fans of Sonic the Hedgehog, I guess, enjoy these to a certain extent. But guys, you deserve better movies than this. I don't know if Sonic as a character or franchise actually deserves better movies than this. This might be the level that this water should rise to, but the fans who are so devoted to this, and many of whom are friends of mine, so I know that they're, good people. Whether or not you deserve better stuff or not out of this franchise, you should ask for it. Who knows, you might get it. You asked for a different design of the Hedgehog and you got it. Maybe try asking for a better script next time. Anyway, Sonic 3, call this a 5 out of 10, I guess. Sorry, Keanu. Don't be mad at me, dude. I really like those John Wick movies. I like literally everything else you do. I technically liked you in this. Not so much the rest of it.